Hello everyone and welcome to this explainer. Today we're tackling something that is literally dominating global conversations right now, the 2026 Middle East crisis. Right off the bat, I want to be crystal clear with you. We aren't here to take sides, to point fingers, or to push any political agenda. Not at all. Our goal today is pure objective understanding. We're going to stick to the facts, the public statements, and the historical data. We really want to figure out the mechanics of this conflict. How exactly does it work? What are the moving parts? Let's get right into it.
So why does this keep happening? That's the big question, isn't it? If you flip on the news in 2026, you'll see governments worldwide issuing statements. The UN is holding emergency sessions. World leaders are raising serious red flags, warning that this situation could completely destabilize the region. And despite all the intense diplomatic maneuvering, all the high-level meetings, the crisis just keeps growing. It really makes you wonder, why with all the world's attention does it just keep happening over and over again?
Okay, let's dive into this and lay out our roadmap. We're going to start by looking at the 2026 escalation. Then we'll dig into the roots of the conflict, map out the positions of key players, uncover exactly why the cycle continues, and finally explore some scenarios for the future.
All right, part one, the 2026 escalation. Let's peel back the very first layer of the onion here.
What we're witnessing today is absolutely not a sudden conflict out of nowhere. It's really a massive peak in tensions. By 2026, this thing has ballooned to an incredible scale. We're talking multiple regions, various armed groups, and major global powers all being drawn in. International media and official reports show us this incredibly tangled web of actors. It's interconnected, it's highly complex, and observers are deeply concerned about how easily it could spread even further.
And here is the harsh reality on the ground. Quote, "There is no final unified decision that has ended the crisis." That might actually be the most crucial takeaway today. Even with negotiations happening literally as we speak, we just aren't seeing permanent solutions. What we get are temporary arrangements. We see these really well-intentioned attempts to cool things down, but none of them stick. They eventually just give way right back to renewed conflict.
Which leads us to part two, roots of the conflict. To understand why those solutions always fail, we have to look backward.
The events of 2026 are built on decades of tension. If we boil all that complex history down, we find four main pillars acting like tinder. First, you've got competing territorial claims, literally multiple groups claiming the exact same land. Second, clashing national identities, where recognizing one group is often viewed as threatening the other. Third, you have these intense struggles for political control. And fourth, tying the whole shebang together, there is a deeply entrenched historical mistrust. These four issues have been the root of wars for generations.
And you can actually track how this plays out in a tragic, repeating pattern. It goes like this. Point 1, an escalation of violence. That eventually leads to point 2, a ceasefire is announced. But then, almost inevitably, we hit point 3, failed peace. Why? Well, agreements collapse because of political shifts, or maybe renewed violence, or they just never actually get implemented on the ground. And that failure dumps us right back into point 4, another escalation. It's a tragic loop where calm just never lasts.
Let's move to part three, positions of key players. Now that we understand the loop, let's map out the board right now.
It is super revealing to look at what the various groups are actually saying right now in 2026. Based strictly on official records, Israel's stated focus is heavily on national security and eliminating perceived threats. On the flip side, Palestinian leadership and groups in Gaza are laser-focused on self-determination, rights, and ending occupation. Then you zoom out to regional influencers like Iran, who publicly state their strategic support for allied groups and their opposition to Western policies. Meanwhile, the U.S. and its allies are trying to walk a tightrope, publicly backing Israel's security while urgently calling for de-escalation and humanitarian aid.
Caught right in the middle of all those competing agendas are the UN and humanitarian groups. They are practically shouting from the rooftops about the worsening conditions, begging for ceasefires and civilian protection. But there's a massive disconnect here. These urgent humanitarian calls are slamming right into a brick wall of diplomatic reality. Proposals get discussed, sure, but actually enforcing a ceasefire on the ground, with all those conflicting goals we just talked about, it is incredibly difficult.
So, part 4, why the cycle continues. We've reached the absolute core of the issue now.
What is the engine driving this endless loop? Well, analysts point to 5 compounding barriers. First, that deep historical mistrust we mentioned. Nobody believes the other side will keep their word. Second, unresolved territorial claims keep the underlying grievances boiling. Third, The involvement of outside regional powers means the fire is constantly being fed with new resources and different geopolitical agendas. Fourth, continuous cycles of retaliation keep the wounds completely fresh. And fifth, all those failed peace agreements from the past, they've created a massive wall of cynicism. People just don't believe peace is actually possible anymore.
And all of this creates what we call the escalation loop, a really dangerous psychological reality. Think about it like this. Step 1. One side takes an action they genuinely view as self-defense. But step 2, because of all that deeply entrenched mistrust, the other side looks at that exact same action and sees unprovoked aggression, which leads directly to step 3, retaliation. Then the retaliator thinks they are just defending themselves, and boom, the loop starts all over again. It is a psychological trap that is remarkably hard to break out of.
Finally, Part 5, Scenarios for the Future. Let's zoom out and look at the horizon.
So what happens next? International analysts generally point to 4 unpredictable possibilities. First, the status quo, just more cycles of escalation and temporary calm. Second, we might see much stronger international intervention stepping into forced stability. Third, there's the hope of long-term negotiated solutions, though pretty much everyone agrees that's a long shot right now. And fourth, the worst-case scenario. The conflict expands, dragging in more global military involvement and completely destabilizing the region. And look, none of these are guaranteed. The situation is incredibly fluid.
But whatever happens, make no mistake, this is not just a regional issue anymore. It affects all of us. The 2026 crisis is rippling out, shifting global political alliances, impacting energy markets, which messes with the global economy, and deeply straining international relations. And most importantly, we are talking about the safety and futures of literally millions of human lives.
So, we've looked at the deeply entrenched history, the key players, and the mechanics of this escalation loop. As the world watches 2026 unfold, looking at a region completely caught in this eternal cycle of action and retaliation, we are left grappling with one incredibly heavy question. Is lasting peace actually possible, or is this cycle of conflict just going to continue? Thanks for learning with us today.